President Nasheed, it's a pleasure to speak to you again, though it's been a while now. First of all, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak to the people of India, and thank you very much for having me.
You've already got down to business now. Just taking you back a little bit, were you surprised because the MDP spokespersons, everyone was saying this is going to be our victory? The whole world was actually thinking it would go the other way because of President Yameen and his control over various institutions.
Well, we always knew that we had the support of the people. You would remember prior to the presidential elections, we had the local council elections.
Yes.
And that showed a very good indication of how the presidential elections could go. Then it was only a question of how to protect the vote. Because the MDP has a very good campaign team and a campaign machine, and because we've been able to build a very strong party, it was very difficult for anyone to take it away from us. We had every single gap plugged, and therefore we were able to come out with these results. Once the people cast their ballot, cast their vote, and once the results were announced, then it was always very difficult. We always knew once that was done, it would be very difficult for any rogue element to come and snatch it away from us. We were very confident that we would come out with this result.
Well, that's paid off. There have been celebrations. Sunday was an absolutely brilliant day when we saw everybody out. No politics for once, enjoying themselves. But it is now down to business. President Solih also has laid down his 100-day plan, very specific there. How is that going on now in terms of getting down to business?
Well, President Mohamed Nasheed has announced his cabinet. He has formed his government. And today is the first day of working for the new cabinet and for the new government. They had identified, the president had identified a 100-day plan. We also have our manifesto and the pledges that we have made to the people. And we have a strategic action plan on how to deliver the pledges. And then also the necessary legislative agenda, and down to procurement orders, down to tender documents. We have all those arranged, planned and prepared. And we believe, therefore, that we will be able to deliver the pledges. The difficulty would be on debt issues. We are still not very clear on the debt figures. If the debt is, as we now estimate, to be over 3 billion, it would be impossible for us to pay that.
And we've seen Prime Minister Modi was the highest dignitary, was invited and came. He never came during President Yameen's tenure, neither did Sushma Swaraj, the foreign minister, as well. There were clear signals there. You've already asked, the government has already asked India, Saudi Arabia to help out in that area.
Well, we have asked India, and I mean, India has always been a very good friend to the Maldives. I remember when I came into government in 2008, on the night of my swearing in, India came in and then plugged all the holes. I believe in times of need, India would always be with the people of the Maldives, and they would assist us. This time, there is also a need to audit all the projects, or rather the sovereign guarantees that has been given to the Chinese Exim Bank and other Chinese banks, the amount of it, why it was given, for what project it was given. So we need to do a proper audit of the assets created.
Audit, but in the weeks ahead before this, you were using much stronger language in terms of that. Has that changed?
No, no, it hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. What we have always been saying is that we will have to pay back what is owed, but we cannot pay for any money that has come in and not, if there is no asset created. No one should expect us to be able to pay back, because there won't be a revenue that we can make from that debt. So we must see the kind of assets that were created through the debt. If there are no assets created through the debt, then we cannot pay it back.
Again, when you're talking about the closeness to China that President Yamin has taken Maldives towards now, that was one of the reasons why there was friction or iciness between New Delhi and Malé as well. That has changed now?
It has. I am pleased to say that our new defense minister has announced that the two new helicopters would remain, and also the visa and work permit issues would be resolved. And then we have a bright, beautiful future in front of us.
Well, Maya Didi, before she became the defense minister and was a spokesperson for then President-elect, soon after the elections, mentioned the same thing to us about the helicopters, that they would in fact stay, that you don't need to give them back, especially when it's a gift. Any further equipment that you need from India will be working towards, whether it's coastal radars, whether it's Dorniers which were given to Seychelles?
Well, you know, I should not be in the business of running cabinet. I should not be running any ministry either. The ministers are very, very competent. They know why we got elected. They know our foreign policy goals. They know our development aims. And they have the proper guidelines as provided by the party, the strategic action plans and so on, the 100-day plan, and then also going to the 5 years. So I think it would all be done in its proper time and as planned and as agreed upon.
Is it needed in your view? Do you need any more, because it's such a vast area that the Maldives covers in terms of sea?
Well, you know, we have 25,000 Maldivians going out into the Indian Ocean every morning. That is for fishing. On top of that, for transport, people traveling from one island to the other. So we have almost a quarter of our population out on the seas all the time. So we are able to actually mobilize more people to the Indian Ocean than probably any other country or any other group. And I believe that any monitoring, any surveillance will be conducted with the people of the Maldives, with the fishermen included in these projects. And we have, in the previous government, we have had discussions on these issues. And I'm quite sure that the new government would continue with those projects.
So those fears about China at some point of time having some port facility for military ships is unfounded?
Well, it will not happen. Even if there was work to that effect and to that direction, this government, I believe, will never do that.
And the Indian ships, of course, have been passing through the Maldives for a long time, joint exercises, Coast Guard. Those will continue. Will that be ramped up?
Well, as much as the Indian military and the Indian Navy wants it done, and as much as that we can jointly do, I don't see that there would be a hindrance there at all.
President Nasheed, you're saying how competent this cabinet is and you're leaving it all up to them. What is your role going to be now?
Well, most importantly, to make sure that President Mohamed Solih's government finishes its term. And I think I can play a role in giving space, making room to the president. And I think I should be able to look after the party, make sure that the rank and file stays behind our policies, make sure also that the rank and file understands what we are doing, that they are fully aware of all the government actions and inactions and what the government is doing.
Again, when you're talking about the coalition here now, you work with many of these people have been against you, but time has brought everybody together again here. As far as experience goes, we've seen many people who have pulled out against you, who have participated in what you call a coup against you, but they are now part of the government. How does that work in terms of keeping this coalition, which is the disparate elements, together?
During the last 20 odd years, most of us, all of us, especially the leaders, former President Gayoom, the Speaker of the Parliament, Honorable Qasim, the Home Minister and the leader of Audited Party, Sheikh Imran, myself, the President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih, and everyone. We've gone through a lot of experiences, and I think we do understand the need to maintain a unity government. Democracy is very new to the Maldives. So before we have to now therefore understand the ground rules before we go into stronger competitive politics. So these few years, we would like to see that we are able to establish the ground rules, especially strengthen the independent institutions, freedom of expression is guaranteed and basic human rights are valued. So I think these empowering, the only way for development is to empower our own people. That is what we call development. If the people are empowered and if the people will go out and seek their rights and seek their riches, get what is due for them, then they will certainly prosper. So it falls on us to make sure that these conditions are well laid out in the Maldives.
So you don't see these various pulls and pressures from the 4 different parties within the coalition to further their agenda coming in the way of the whole government working together?
Well, we have a council that sits with all the leaders of the parties in the council. So if there is a disagreement, a misunderstanding, we can always sort it out.
Will you be playing a part in
I am myself, Honorable Qasim, former President Gayoom, and also Sheikh Imran, with the President and the Vice President. We sit in an advisory council. And then, in this council, we should be able to iron out any differences, any difficulties that we have. I believe that we will be able to sort things and deliver to the people.
We talked about an audit, about a review of all the programs that have been announced or in progress with the previous government. Does that mean that people in the government, including the topmost, former President Yamin, will be held accountable for any wrongdoing, any laws that they have broken, any corruption that they are involved in?
Well, the President...
And it not being a witch hunt. So
no, whatever we do, we must seek for rule of law. It must go through proper procedures. It must be completely free, completely fair. We will not tolerate anything else. But President Yamin must be brought to the book. He must be held accountable. Yesterday, President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih has announced a commission to investigate the disappearances and the deaths. Now, these are very grave issues that our people have been very worried for a long period of time. Yes, so many other cases. There's been many cases, and we do not want the country sliding in that direction where vested interest and groups can go ahead and eliminate people. This should not happen. So we will want to investigate that. We would want to find out what had happened. And make a judgment on that. Everyone will be made accountable.
The other commission that President Solih also has set up is in line with what we were talking about in terms of corruption.
Especially not simply just corruption, but money laundering. Now, because there was so rampant money laundering through our national accounts, we have lost, our financial system has lost credibility. And therefore, foreign direct investments are becoming increasingly difficult. Now, the state of the judiciary, and because we have used our national accounts to launder money, ill-gotten wealth, our financial system has taken a big hit. We must clean it. We must create confidence. I am sure the Maldives would be a good place for everyone in India to invest, and they will have good returns. I met GMR officials during the inauguration. They are quite aware of what had happened in the past. They also do understand that we have every ambition to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Now, again, for these reasons as well, we need the coalition.
What about your message to India in terms of what's happened in the last few years, how India has reacted to events in the Maldives and how they've been treated? And also some perception possibly that in the beginning of your tenure, you were also moving towards China in some manner.
See, our relationship with India is not based on our fortunes. In sickness and in health, we remain. Yes, of course, we have nothing against the people of China. And if China wants to have an embassy or a representation in the Maldives, they must be able to do that. That doesn't mean, that is no indication that we want to change our state type or that we want to relinquish our relationships with our neighbors. With India, we share the same heritage, we read the same books, we eat the same food, we watch the same films, and we are the same people. For generations, India has been right next to us and has been assisting us. Maldives has never felt a threat from India.
In fact, we've had you in 1988.
Well, 1988 is just very recent. But even if we go throughout history, India is never a threat. The threat always came from elsewhere. In the 16th and 17th century from Portugal and the Dutch, and then later on from the Brits. So again, you know, we fear an external incursion into the Indian Ocean would be our problem. The
That is not coming from India.
That is not, so it's an external, you know, India is not external. Right. India is very internal. Maldives' security and safety is linked to India's safety and security. We do this, we pursue India First policy because that's in the interest of the people of the Maldives. Not because it's in the interest of India alone, but it's because we also must be able to plug into Indian development, and I am sure that's a rapid path for our betterment. We do not see India as a threat at all. I'm quite sure the vast majority of the Maldivian people would feel the same. Even when people try to create a wedge, it hits back on them. This election is a very good example of that.
Okay. You spent so much time in Sri Lanka when you were not allowed to be here, when you were in exile. You've seen what's happening in Sri Lanka. Just looking at time, does it seem to have gone full circle? Because what is happening in Sri Lanka now was happening in Maldives now earlier, and when Maldives was going through tumult, Sri Lanka was the model.
Well, it's heartbreaking to see our cousins in Sri Lanka going through these difficulties. We have a lot of confidence in Sri Lankan people and its institutions, especially its military and its judiciary. And I believe that they will deliver. I believe that they will rise to the occasion. I do not see them interfering in politics or in political matters. Now, for instance, here, the military went into the parliament. The military went into the Supreme Court. I do not believe that these things would happen in Sri Lanka. So it's for the politicians to sort it out. And I think, and again, I know most of them.
Exactly. So I'm involved even when the war crimes issue was coming up. You know all the sides. Do you think you could help resolve what's happening in Sri Lanka since Maldives is a bit stable now?
Well, you know, if there is anything that we could do, but again, you know, I keep saying that their political institutions are far stronger than ours. The UNP, the SLFP, their political parties are. UNP is one of the oldest political parties in South Asia. So they would have the capacity and the strength to deal with it. But if there is any mediation or any assistance that we can provide, we are certainly willing to do that.
President Nasheed, you talked about what your role now is and how you will be working with the party, how you're working with the coalition government itself. In the past, you have often talked about how Maldives probably needs a parliamentary system. Are you going to work towards that?
Well, most South Asian countries have a parliamentary system. Even if we are even working, yes, I have always believed in a parliamentary system, and I always do believe that Maldives stability, political stability, would hinge upon a parliamentary system. But for that to happen, we would have to have wider consultation. And again, I must stress, I will not do anything without consulting the President and without his consent. So the President is our man. We grew up together. Yes. He's my best friend. There is no way that I am going to do anything that would disturb his presidency. His presidency is mine, it's ours.
You know what I'm referring to, people who talk about within the next 5 years possibly, if a parliamentary system comes and the power shifts to a prime ministerial position, you become a prime minister and President Solih. You know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, well, yes, I mean, I do, you know, people keep on wanting me to be in government and engaged in building the country. And I do like that. And I have not said that I will give up local politics at all. So I would do that. The President has asked me to go to COP24 in Poland. Now, that's a very big issue to the Maldives. We would like to tell the world that the Maldives is back again. And climate change is important. We must deliver the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. We must see how we may be able to do that. India and China, both countries, are delivering. They are doing their best. It's not even the United States, the people of the United States. I mean, if you look at it, California being the 5th largest economy in the world is soon going to be carbon neutral. But somehow the administration is unable to get a grip on that. So we would like to see how we may be able to impress upon President Trump how the United States can be helpful in delivering the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. Climate change is real. It's happening. In the Maldives, we have coastal erosion, water contamination, dwindling fish catch, weather patterns are changing, wind is becoming more harsh and harsh, seas therefore get rough, coral is bleaching. There are a number of issues that's happening. So we do. It's just the whole of Maldives. It's the essence of an island nation.
So the island president could possibly go up against India and China on this regard,
well,
at least.
I think Indian people and Indian government will understand that. We cannot sign a suicide pact with any country. If world temperatures rise above 2 degrees and if carbon content is over 450 parts per million, now then we are going to die. And it's just not going to be the Maldives. More than a quarter of the world's population lives on low-lying areas. And we cannot have a situation where a quarter of the world's population is on the march. I would like Indian people to back climate change issues. Now, it's not only mitigation, it's also adaptation. How are we going to safeguard our islands? Now, can we continue building big water breakers, embankments, revetments, and so on? I think there are more softer engineering methods, cheaper ones. You could grow a reef, you could genetically modify reef growth. You could grow a mangrove and save your coastline. You can harvest rainwater. There's a whole another development strategy. There is a low carbon development strategy. There is also another adaptation strategy. The present adaptation strategies are obsolete. They are the 1930s and 40s technology. So we should move away from that. And whatever projects that we get from India, we would like them to make sure that these new projects fall into this new thinking, which will be feasible, which is financially feasible as well. So right now, mitigation is not the big issue for small islands. Adaptation is the big issue for small islands.
President Nasheed, again, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and here's to new thinking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.